This is probably the best Hood movie of all time, as whereas other movies relating to the Hood often portray it in a glamorous and often exciting type of way, this movie really shows the effects this type of environment can have on those living in it and can lead them down a destructive path. The movie explores this lifestyle with such rich detail that after you're watching, you're left with an understanding for those who grew up that way, and it really opens your eyes to how terrible some people's upbringings can be. Watching it really shocks you as it doesn't hold back in regards to its brutality, and nobody, even kids, are spared, which is vital in showing because it demonstrates how absolutely unforgiving and dangerous the Hood is. The main character is incredibly sympathetic, as despite being raised in an environment with countless acts of violence, he still strives to be a good person and escape the clutches of the world he lives in. And the antagonist Lil Zay is absolutely despicable and one of the most hateable villains of all time, which really means the actor did a great job at portraying him. This is a movie everyone should watch as it teaches you an important lesson on not to go down the wrong path and also be grateful for what you do have because there's always people living worse off than you.
Scripted by screenwriter extraordinaire Charlie Kaufman, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind has to be the best movie ever made about doomed relationships. It's such an emotionally powerful movie that masterfully explores a breakup by showing how two different memories affect both people. The film features Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet as a couple named Joel and Clementine, whom both are utterly devastated by their breakup that they decide to erase each other from their memories. But as the film progresses, they eventually regret their decisions and try to insert each other back into their past. It's such a magnificent way to deconstruct love by questioning the nature of reality and the significance of memories. Unlike so many science fiction stories that use concept to up the stakes and allow it to play out in the grandest possible scale, Eternal Sunshine looks on how it could impact us on an individual level, and the result is one of the most hauntingly beautiful science fiction films of all time. Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet have such remarkable chemistry with each other as they deliver possibly the greatest performances in both of their respective careers in Eternal Sunshine, as the film combines heart, humor, and plot twists into an unforgettable package. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is such a brilliant movie that will totally destroy you, but at the same time, it'll make you reevaluate your life. I highly recommend those who haven't.
Now, this is one case of a movie I honestly think might be superior to the book. Peter Jackson brought the novel to life in such a pristine way that it almost feels as if you're going through a journey through Middle Earth yourself. It has some of the best cinematography of all time, and it's often so beautiful it will completely take your breath away. The casting here was impeccable, and it's almost impossible to pick a standout, as everyone was just so perfect in their role. But perhaps the standouts are Elijah Wood as Frodo and Sean Astin as Sam. They seriously have some of the greatest chemistry I've ever seen in a film, and it's so good you almost forget that you're watching fictional characters. The fight sequences are also impeccably shot, and the musical composition is phenomenal, as it perfectly blends in and captures the vibe of every scene it's in. The fact that this movie isn't even the best in the trilogy is really a testament to how outstanding the series is.
What Goodfellas was to the 90s is what City of God was to the 2000s. Set in the slums of Rio de Janeiro, City of God follows the lives of several young men as they navigate poverty, crime, and violence. The film expertly explores the themes of ambition, loyalty, and survival in a harsh world. It also uses non-linear storytelling and documentary-style cinematography to capture the chaotic energy and desperation of the favelas. The film's young cast of non-professional actors adds to the authenticity. Overall, City of God is such an extraordinary movie that helped pave the way for the new wave of Brazilian cinema, making it one of the greatest foreign films of all time.
This is without a doubt the greatest animated film of all time. It's almost impossible to describe on paper, but once you watch it, you'll see how it's unlike anything you've ever witnessed before, and it's kind of like you're on a really fun acid trip. The animation in this movie is jaw-droppingly gorgeous and really sucks you into the world it portrays. Everything is so colorful and vibrant, and no other movie even comes close to matching the amount of detail and range that's portrayed in the animation here. Each character is extremely memorable here, as everyone is wildly different from one another due to everyone having their own unique appearance, powers, and personality. What's also great about this movie is that there really isn't a true villain in the story, as even the antagonists are portrayed in shades of gray and have their own redeeming qualities, whereas in a lot of films the characters are rather one-dimensional with regards to their morality. The movie has a lot of emotion as well, and there's also some parts that will genuinely have you on the edge of your seat. Overall, this movie is one of a kind and something every film lover should watch at least once.
Now, I was very, very tempted to put the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy at this very spot, but objectively, when it comes to discussing the best movie of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Return of the King is the cream of the crop. Peter Jackson's epic fantasy adventure capped off arguably the greatest trilogy of all time in style, continuing the good work of the first two movies and adding plenty more of J.R.R. Tolkien's imaginative creatures and stunning locations for good measure. Bringing this epic movie trilogy to a conclusion had to be one of the toughest missions for any title to achieve, but Return of the King did it with excessive skill and even receiving an astonishing 11 Oscars. The quality of this movie proved why it earned all these accolades, as the feature perfectly balances all of its moving parts. The emotional core is unbelievably strong, the action sequences are at an all-time high, and the characters all gain satisfying conclusions to their stories. Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King is a shining example of how you end an epic trilogy, and most likely will never be bested as the greatest fantasy movie of all time.
This was the perfect ending to the greatest movie trilogy of all time. It has everything that made the two previous films so legendary and amplifies it even further. It has the heart, action, character moments, gorgeous cinematography, as well as some genuinely frightening moments as well. This is the one where you really start to care about the characters more than ever, as the danger they face is the most imminent, and it's their one last true chance to defeat evil once and for all. This has not just the best and most iconic moments in the trilogy, but some of the most iconic movie moments of all time. Whether it comes to the final battle, destruction of the ring, Sam carrying Frodo, as well as much more. The ending to this film is both beautiful and tear-jerking at the same time, as you have to watch characters you grew to love over the course of 3 films say goodbye to each other. And despite being 3.5 hours long, which is extremely long for a movie, this movie is paced perfectly from start to finish, as there isn't a single bad or even boring moment. This movie will forever be used as a benchmark for how to end a franchise and be remembered not just as one of the best movies of the decade, but one of the best films ever made.
When it comes to discussing the most unique filmmaker, none of them come more original than David Lynch, considering the phenomenal body of work he has in his resume. From being the co-creator of the classic TV show Twin Peaks, to directing amazing movies like Eraserhead, Elephant Man, and even Blue Velvet. But for me personally, his greatest work has to be his 2001 movie Mulholland Drive, as it continues to be his most hypnotic achievement to date. Set in a dreamlike vision of Hollywood, the film follows an aspiring actress named Betty Elms, who befriends a beautiful woman named Rita, who had survived a brutal murder attempt in a car accident. Along the way, the two are drawn into a web of mysteries, secrets, and questionable realities. This film is full of David Lynch's trademarks, whether it fits the romance, the horror, the self-aware meta commentary on Hollywood, and philosophical themes. Overall, if you're looking for a mysterious thriller that can get in your head and under your skin, then Mulholland Drive is definitely the film for you.
This is without a doubt the greatest superhero movie of all time, and in my honest opinion, the best film of the decade, as well as the top 10 movie ever made. Despite being a superhero film, it has a highly realistic edge to it, and is just as much a commentary on real-world issues like politics, law and order, and corruption of society. Heath Ledger elevated this film to a whole new level and gives possibly the best villain performance of all time as Joker. He manages to be both incredibly frightening and menacing, while also darkly humorous and entertaining. He even makes it easy to root for him despite how evil he is, because of how absolutely lovable he is as a character. He was definitely the show stealer here, but besides that, the rest of the performances were great as well. specifically Christian Bale as Batman, Aaron Eckhart as Harvey Dent, and Gary Oldman as Commissioner Gordon. Everything about this film is just utter perfection, and it's hard to pick even a single flaw. The action is slick and tight, musical score and cinematography are captivating, and it's filled with some of the best and most iconic dialogue ever. It also has some of the best pacing ever, as there's never a single dull moment, and it's hard to even pick what the best scene is, due to the entire film just being so damn incredible. Even in 100 years from now, this movie will still likely stand the test of time and remain one of the all-time greatest.
Yes, Spirited Away, the very movie that put Studio Ghibli on the map for Western audiences in 2001. Ever since the film's release, it has become such a beloved classic, and if you ask most people, it remains the best thing that Hayao Miyazaki has ever created. Everything about Spirited Away captures the very best of what Studio Ghibli has to offer, from its assessments of environmentalism to its stunning art, and its portrayal of family to its empathetic depiction of facing change. Spirited Away has it all and then some, remaining 2 decades after its release, a film of unmatched creativity and joy. With it, the great Miyazaki reached his full potential and cemented Studio Ghibli as the powerhouse it was always intended to be. It is without question the greatest animated film of all time.
Now, there have been a lot of films about growing up, but none have done it quite as well as Boyhood. What's so interesting is how this movie was filmed over a period of 12 years using the same actors, which really encaptures you in the characters' lives and makes it feel like you're actually watching real people throughout the different stages of their lives. This film really captures the different stages of growing up with such precise detail, whether it comes to fighting with your siblings, anxiety of starting a new school, experimenting with drinking and weed for the first time, falling in love. There's something here that everyone can likely relate to at one point or another. In a way, it's kind of like watching your own life play out, and there's many moments that will induce a sense of nostalgia as you're reminded of your own experiences in your youth. The acting is fantastic here, as everybody really did an excellent job at embodying their character. In particular, the guy who plays the main character, Mason, as he really shows the character's maturity as he grows older, while still retaining many of his core personality traits. And despite being almost 3 hours, this movie never feels too long, and each moment is dedicated to developing the characters and showing meaningful interactions between them. This is a movie I'd encourage everyone to watch, as there's a lot you could relate to and learn from it.
When it comes to discussing the 2015 action movie Mad Max Fury Road, directed by George Miller, there was seemingly no chance that the movie was going to work, considering the fact that it spent 3 decades in development hell. On paper, the movie sounded like it had all the makings to become a box office bomb, but much to everybody's surprise, it became one of the most celebrated and critically acclaimed films of the 2010s. Why, you ask? I could honestly put it in a lot of fancy terms, but simply put, Mad Max Fury Road is such a non-stop thrill ride, as it is visually stunning, as it is action-packed. It features Tom Hardy as Max Rockatansky, who finds himself helping a group of women to escape the clutches of the dastardly warlord Immortan Joe. While Hardy's performance was undeniably stellar, Charlize Theron stole the show as Imperator Furiosa, infusing an intense dose of feminism set against a male-dominated backdrop created by the villainous Immortan Joe and his World Boys. With a great cast, dazzling set pieces, gorgeous visuals paired with practical effects, Mad Max Fury Road is a modern classic and is a must-see for anybody who loves action movies.
This is easily one of the greatest music films of all time. The film follows Andrew Neiman, a determined yet obsessive teenager who dreams of becoming an all-time great musician. Miles Teller does a fantastic job playing the character, as he perfectly portrays his awkwardness, frustration, and passion for music. Andrew is a character whom the audience can highly root for and wants to succeed due to how much work he puts in trying to accomplish his goals. He's also highly relatable as well, as we've all had a time where we really wanted to achieve something, and as well as the pain and frustration at not being able to reach our goals as quickly as we wanted to. J.K. Simmons' performance is perhaps the best in the film though, as he expertly plays Terrence Fletcher, an aggressive music instructor who makes his character from the Spider-Man films look like the world's nicest person in comparison. However, despite how much of a complete asshole he is, he still remains incredibly entertaining due to his hilarious dialogue, and he actually turns out to be someone who has reasonable goals despite his douchebag facade. This movie is incredibly intense, not just emotionally, but also physically, as it brilliantly shows the effects drumming can have on a person's body after long periods of time, with the camera lingering on sweat dripping down the body and hands bleeding. Overall, though, this remains an incredibly inspiring film that encourages you to reach for your dreams, and which shows that with enough practice, anything is possible.
Following the original 1982 Blade Runner movie directed by Ridley Scott, French-Canadian director Denis Villeneuve had the opportunity of a lifetime, and that was being in charge of crafting a sequel to an enduring classic. It builds on Ridley Scott's groundbreaking sci-fi noir classic in countless ways, both thematically and plot-wise, but can also stand on its own as a masterpiece of modern cinema. While sure, Blade Runner 2049 may have done poor numbers at the box office, the results were way better than anyone could have anticipated, as the movie unanimously received critical acclaim. This movie served as a worthy follow-up by honoring the original while also paving its own path. With impressive world building and astonishing visuals, Denis Villeneuve's vision is awe-inspiring from start to finish.
This is perhaps Quentin Tarantino's greatest film after Pulp Fiction. It has everything you'd love to see in a Tarantino movie, such as the sharp dialogue, quirky characters, over-the-top violence. It's all delivered in spectacular Tarantino fashion. It's an incredibly dark and disturbing film dealing with heavily serious subject matter while also being backed up by a more lighthearted tone in order to balance out the darker moments. It has a collage of some of the most talented actors in cinema, each of them giving an outstanding performance. Christoph Waltz and Jamie Foxx are phenomenal as the two main characters and bring a mixture of both heart and humor to their roles. And it does a really great job developing the bond between them and making you root for them. Leonardo DiCaprio and Samuel L. Jackson are fantastic as the antagonists who, despite being absolutely despicable, still remain entertaining and somewhat likable. While you're rooting for them to get killed due to how evil they are, you still can't help but appreciate how well portrayed their characters are. And that's the mark of a good villain, is that you both love and hate them at the same time. The ending is incredibly badass, as it ends in an excruciatingly brutal fashion with blood spraying everywhere, which is exactly the type of thing you'd want to see in a Tarantino film. And the film also ends on an emotional note too, with the main character getting what he was searching for the whole film.
Oh look, another Denis Villeneuve movie in my top 5. This star-studded crime drama follows a group of parents who take the investigations of their daughter's disappearances into their own hands. My favorite aspect about Prisoners is the way how Villeneuve places the psychological torment of the parents front and center as they debate how best to handle their increasingly urgent circumstances. The resulting product is simultaneously restrained and chill-inducing. Out of all the films in Villeneuve's catalog, Prisoners showcased his most direct exploration of questions around morality and is an extended meditation of the ethical dilemma of why quote-unquote good people do quote-unquote bad things. Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal just give it their all in this film, as their performances are just damn near perfect, and the fact that they didn't receive Oscar nominations is just appalling to me. Like, I just will never understand that at all. It's enthralling, captivating, intellectual, and a must-see for any self-appointed lover of cinema.
Martin Scorsese is undoubtedly one of the best directors of all time, and in my opinion, this is a top 3 film of his, right next to Goodfellas and Taxi Driver, and my personal favorite one from him. Leonardo DiCaprio gives arguably his best performance to date as Jordan Belfort, which is really saying something considering how many phenomenal performances he has. He just brought so much personality and energy to the role and really stole every scene he was in. And even though he does some pretty shady things, you just can't help but root for him due to how funny and charismatic he is. Everyone here gives an absolutely outstanding performance, with other standouts being Jonah Hill as the hilarious and lighthearted Donnie, and Margot Robbie as the gorgeous Naomi. This movie really makes it feel like you're experiencing what it's like to be rich, as it deeply explores the life of luxury, whether it comes to the nice houses, fancy cars, hot women, awesome boats. Everything is depicted in such exquisite detail. This is also by far Martin Scorsese's funniest film, as it's filled with endlessly hilarious dialogue and laugh-out-loud moments from start to finish. And even though much of the behavior and action shown here are incredibly toxic, it doesn't at all glamorize it, as it shows the negative ramifications that can come from leading this type of lifestyle, and nobody gets away with their actions in the end. The pacing here is also perfect, as despite being incredibly long, every scene is incredibly entertaining, and by the time it's all done, it will only feel like an hour.
With Whiplash being the second directorial effort by Damien Chazelle, it was the film that put him on the map, as it showed the world that he was a one-of-a-kind director. The film features two amazing lead performances, with Miles Teller as a jazz drummer and J.K. Simmons as a ruthless music teacher who pushes him to his limits. As the story progresses, one begins to realize how deep Chazelle is prepared to burrow into the pit of human misery, while also exploring the heavy price of pursuing artistic excellence at all costs. The chemistry between Simmons and Teller is what keeps Whiplash in a vibrant motion, as Simmons plays the oppressive force that drives Teller's character obsession to a point of no return.
Christopher Nolan took my spot for the best film of the 2000s, and here he takes my spot again. This is a movie unlike any other, as it has a completely original plot about being able to travel in people's dreams. It has mind-blowing visual effects, which are reminiscent of something like The Matrix, while also having the brilliant writing that you would expect to see in a Nolan film. The special effects are mind-blowingly amazing, and some of the greatest of all time, as it really transcends all time and logic in an exceptionally immersive way. Unlike a lot of other movies, which often over-rely on fake-looking CGI, the effects here actually look natural and are oftentimes so realistic, you'll even forget you're watching a movie. The pacing is incredibly tight and fast-paced, and there's many suspenseful moments throughout that will have you on the edge of your seat. It makes use of some of the most talented actors like Leonardo DiCaprio and Cillian Murphy, and has them all deliver outstanding performances. Everyone really played a part here, and every single character feels properly fleshed out and given plenty of development. The standout, though, is definitely Leonardo DiCaprio, as he held most of the film's emotional weight and remains incredibly sympathetic due to him coming to terms with the loss of his wife, which is incorporated into the plot really well, and the scenes between them are absolutely emotionally jarring. This movie truly executed everything perfectly and is perhaps Nolan's second greatest film and up there with the best movies ever made.
Now, I'm not gonna lie, when I watched Parasite for the first time, I didn't really fully get it at first. It kind of took time for me to understand it. And the more I've rewatched it, the more I've come to understand how fucking brilliant this film is. Telling the story of a poor family who schemed to become employed by a wealthy family to make ends meet, Parasite effortlessly breezes through a half of a dozen genres, but never loses sight of its core assessments of wealthy inequality. The film has been hailed as a commentary on class struggle, capitalism, and social inequality. It also brought Korean cinema to the forefront of the global film industry, highlighting the country's unique filmmaking talent.